Assassin's Creed Mirage is really good when you explore the dense city, parkour over its rooftops, infiltrate the many camps, and outsmart your enemies by using your tools in creative ways. Going through the decently sized wilderness took me back to playing Assassin's Creed Origins for the first time. It's beautiful and actually has some fun secrets as well. I really liked it. Mirage does feel as a more linear, story-focused game for me though. The game starts really strong and ends on a high note, but the bulk of the main story content that happens in between feels similar to one of the many story arcs from Valhalla, or some of the content we saw in the expansions for that game. There are only a few big memorable moments, like it makes sense that a 100-hour RPG divides these big scale events over a massive campaign, but the 13-hour story of Mirage could have used more cinematic moments that we did see in the other more linear story-focused games like the Ezio trilogy. Luckily, Mirage feels incredibly good to play, and that makes up for a lot. Basim is fast, super responsive, and has some of the most spectacular combat moves I've seen an assassin pull off. You really feel like a badass when slaying an enemy in these glorious ways, even 20 hours in, and I'm still surprised by the amazing finishing animations that Basim will use on its final target, and there are different variants for certain enemies as well. Like, that was totally an issue in the RPG games, that you would very quickly see all the different finishing animations because there were only a few per weapon or enemy type. In Mirage, because you only have the sword and dagger as weapons, that just made a ton of finishers for those, meaning that they switch each other off nicely, so you rarely see the same one close to each other. Wish they would have given the same love to the hidden blade assassinations though. Like, it's really cool that the bench assassinations and assassinations from hiding spots are back, but apart from that, they are almost all straight out of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've talked about it before here on the channel, but if you played Valhalla, you will see a lot of elements that have carried over, from UI and menus to how shops function, certain activities, etc. But still, at its core, Mirage manages to feel like a completely different game. And that's especially because of the focus on one big city. You already maybe saw it in the pre-launch footage, but there are a ton of people on the streets, and their looks and styles vary depending on the district you are in. There's a clear divide between the rich and poor, with the wealthy center part of the city also having more people you can steal from. And having larger crowds really means that the impact of your illegal actions are way more realistic. The citizens will run when you're being chased or kill someone. They act stressed if they just figured out that they lost their money because you stole it a few seconds ago, and they will also call you out and alert the guards if they saw your face on a wanted poster. So you're rarely safe on the streets if you got a high notoriety level, with eventually a mercenary coming to hunt you, who early on is very hard to defeat. So where in the RPG games you are constantly facing the enemy head on after being spotted, in Mirage it's often super beneficial to keep a low profile, explore the city from the rooftops, and go back into the shadows after being seen. I know, what a concept, right? We never saw that before in the series. No, but it's great that Mirage brings that feeling back. And also, of course, in the very traditional Assassin Templar story, that is now, of course, still the Hidden Ones versus the Order of the Ancients. So we, as a young Basim, early on train to become an assassin and get one clear mission: eliminate the powerful Order targets in Baghdad that use their influence to hurt the common folk in favor of themselves. Although I was surprised by another big factor that was at play here, but it's cooler if you figured it out for yourself. Now, you first have to identify the target by finding clues like written notes, maybe eavesdrop and overhear conversations. But my favorite objectives have us follow someone again without being spotted, and I love how there's no game over screen for this. Instead, when they spot you, you will just have to wait a full day for them to return to their location and then follow them again. And while some objectives return over the course of the game, they do a great job at balancing things out, so you are never repeating the same thing too often. And I was surprised by how much I liked the side contracts. They sometimes exceed the main story objectives for me, for sure. Like, one had me raise a hidden one, so just a friendly battle to see who would reach the objective first. There are also many infiltrate this area to steal something or assassinate a target missions, so more gameplay focused, but I also had to escort a weapons dealer to the city, where stealth was also the better option to not raise my notoriety, as having the mercenary show up here would make the quest way harder. I also got a better reward if I did not take any damage, which of course also hard to pull off if you get spotted. Like, the game really pushes you to play it stealth, but it never punishes you for going straight into battle. And that's great because, again, the combat is really amazing if you get the hang of it. It really feels like you're playing one of the RPG games on Ultra Nightmare because of Basim's low health and little damage. And some enemies also have an unfair advantage thanks to their armored bodies that negate melee hits from the front. And overall, it feels like these guards are just way more aggressive and simply not afraid of you, quickly chaining their attacks. So you have to constantly move out of their way and wait for the right time to strike. Stamina management is also more important, as without it you are unable to dodge, so will take the hit. Like, all of this combined makes combat a bit more difficult than the previous games, and then when you do find that groove and do master it, it actually makes it way more satisfying. But yeah, this also means that stealth is really the more viable option, because then you can just sneak up to the powerful armored brute and instantly take them out. Stealth really opens up when you got all your tools, which you can get relatively early on. The upgrades are pretty impactful too, and it's really fun to figure out new ways to chain them together. Like, I found that luring enemies to a spot with a noisemaker is great, because they can hit them all with one smoke bomb and easily assassinate them one by one. But this does bring me to my overall feeling when playing Mirage, and that is that we're just due for some bigger jumps within the series. Now, I do think Mirage gets away with it because it does a great job at bringing back older elements that were not prominently featured for the last 8 years, but it also does not evolve them. Stealth at its core is still really similar. We hide in the tall grass, either whistle, use a ranged weapon to take out an enemy, or sneak up to them, and then we move on. The only real interesting new thing, in my opinion, is the assassin's focus, that you don't have to use, by the way. Like, I barely activated it during my playthrough, but it can make for some funny ways to infiltrate an outpost. Parkour in Mirage also does not really push the series forward. The only new thing is the pole vault, but no joke, I think I used it only 2 times. Like, you're unable to grab them when being chased, which is kinda weird, but still, because the city is so perfectly built with verticality in mind, the gameplay in Mirage is great. Like, there are always options to get higher up or quickly move from roof to roof. You also should not expect a lot of new open world elements. The Tales of Baghdad are fun little narrative adventures with some cool Easter eggs, but they are few and far between. There are enigmas, which are similar to the treasure maps from the previous games, and overall there are a lot of collectibles that you will then have to bring back to a certain character to get some rewards. These collectibles are usually hidden behind a small puzzle, but to solve them we are carrying oil jars again and throwing them at breakable walls. There are many barred doors, so you have to find a window to open the lock from the other side, or find a key for a locked door. Like, if you played the RPG games, you will have solved these hundreds of times, and Mirage does nothing to change them up. Like, it does mean that you will reach some of the gear chests faster though, and these can contain some really nice new weapons, although mostly the outfits steal the show. They are all hugely detailed and varied. Some remind me of Origins, others give Basim the more traditional assassin look, and there are some very unique outfits as well. Now, I do wish they would change on an upgrade like in Valhalla, but that is sadly not the case. Now, there is also another issue with this, because to upgrade an item you will need the upgrade schematic, and they can also drop from these gear chests. So how it works is that there's an order to this, with the first gear chest in a region giving you a weapon or outfit, and then the next 2 gear chests that you find in that same region giving you the upgrade schematic for that item. But yeah, if you don't like that item and don't want to upgrade it, you will know that the next 2 gear chests in that region will have something that is worthless to you before you can find a new piece of equipment. Some gear chests are also harder to find than others, so sometimes you will spend 10 minutes or more trying to figure out how to reach it, only to find a piece of paper that you don't want to use. So yes, Mirage is far from perfect, but it totally did and is still scratching my itch. Like, it's satisfying that want for a new Assassin's Creed game now that we had the longest gap, as Valhalla of course launched 3 years ago. Overall, Mirage is almost exactly what I expected. A huge beefed up Assassin's Creed Valhalla expansion that brings back a lot of the features from the older games. Saying that though really doesn't do it justice, not only because they did a great job at implementing these old school features into a newer style game, but also because the gameplay and the combat in particular feels really good. For me, the gameplay is that perfect blend between the older and newer titles. Like, I can even recommend it to people who are itching for a new Assassin's Creed but only liked the RPG games, and I did not expect this at first. Because even though they turned down some of the RPG elements, there's actually still a lot of it here, with pretty impactful skills, perks on weapons and armor that you can like pretty nicely combined. We'll of course share some tips in future videos. Now, I did hope that the narrative side would hit better for me. Like, I overall liked the story and did not see some of the twists coming, but it once again felt like the Valhalla problem for me, where the opening and the ending were really big and important, but the rest just did not hit on the same level. Now, the nice part is that getting to that end in Mirage is like way faster than in Valhalla, but still I could use more memorable set piece moments throughout the game as well. Now, I do think Mirage has shown that this relatively new team at Ubisoft Bordeaux is able to make a full-fledged narrative-driven linear game with hopefully the budget and time to give us more of these cinematic moments, more evolved old-school systems, and puzzles that do not only have to use the tools from Valhalla. For now though, we got a great game that will hold us over until the main event next year when Assassin's Creed Red is expected. Now, we are just getting started here with our spoiler-free tips and tricks videos for Mirage, so totally of course subscribe. I will be streaming the game as well. Leaving a like would be awesome. If you got any questions for Mirage, let me know in the comments down below, and you can already check our first tips and tricks video with the early things you want to get by clicking on the screen. I will speak to you very soon. Enjoy the game. Goodbye.